I think the particular theme for today is people blindly following people or blindly listening to people that they are influenced by. How much do we want to talk about the reason why we want to talk about it?
Did an episode with our friend Jean talking about fandoms just being real interesting. And so after that, I just wanted to try to figure out the different criteria of like basically like toxic fandoms by looking at the things that are in like stan culture or parasocial relationships that make them like that. So we could like analyze other fandoms and use those criteria to make, because we're teachers at our core, like always pretty much, or we're making like our own syllabus. And so the other things we've done so far is like an episode on stalking, on how they always dox trauma victims for some reason. Massive like internet dogpiling in like a harassment out of control sort of way, very randomly. And then this one is about like blind devotion is what we called it earlier. And it just like not stopping to think about what you're really doing before you do it because you're so like focused on like what you want to do. That happened on Threads on our podcast account, which is why I'm like, I need a break from this for a while. And hopefully, I don't even know. I just wanted to go on as long as humanly possible. Someone, their name is Aaliyah Sheffield. I don't know who they are, but that's just because I don't know everybody. And she's a Grammy-winning songwriter. And so I know that because I remember what her bio said, because for the last like however many months, I would see like her post randomly. She was like one of those people that I would see post about like current events, but I never followed her account because there's a lot of accounts like that on Threads that you just kind of see a lot. And she posted an article that was a story about, we're about to say the word incest a lot. And so if that's like something that you don't want to hear about right now, I'll put like giant words on the screen, but also when we do trigger warnings, I put in our description like when the trigger warnings start and when they end, so you can just like skip ahead if you don't want to hear it. But she was posting an article about a case where a daughter was raped by her biological dad, and she died by suicide later on, and he admitted to it. And the article was about how the family was frustrated that the longest he would get in prison was 3 years. And she did that thing that people do sometimes where they like repost an article and they're like trying to critique like how they like lessen the severity of the story by like using different words. Like, you know, when they say like woman instead of like a young girl was like, or like harassed instead of like, you know, R-worded or something, that kind of stuff. And so the article, she said like incest and SA, I fixed it for you. And I just responded to it basically saying like, that's like saying the same thing twice. Like incest always includes SA and like rape. So like, I don't understand. And the article itself was very like, it was a rare article where it wasn't like shying away from any of that stuff. Like the title of it is "A California Man Pleaded Guilty to Incest with His 18-year-old Daughter Who Later Died by Suicide." Like it was not like it was not trying to make the story sound better than it was, like a lot of them actually do. And so like that was just like a random thing, like before I went to bed one night. And then I woke up the next morning and she responded saying like, unfortunately, incest isn't always SA. Those words do mean two different things because sometimes people like choose it basically, or it's consensual. And I just replied and was like, no, like it's never consensual basically is what I said. Like it can't be. Like there's no person is going to choose to do that unless they're another choice of like them having like a life where they could choose anything else was taken away from them. There's never consent. You can never like consent to something like that. Like there's something that has happened to you to like force you to feel like that's your only choice, no matter like the circumstance basically, because it's inherently like goes against just like human nature in across the world. It's just like that people don't, the idea of like mixing familial family bonds with like romantic sexual things just inherently goes against what you think should be possible. And so the only way that you like mix those things is by something unhealthy happening,
Yeah.
essentially, where you could even like see that as even like an option or feel like it's the only thing that you can do. Um, and so she, in the middle of me like writing like a response to like explain that sort of thing to her in her comments, she blocked me and
Mhm.
then posted screenshots of me of like the things that I said to her before she blocked me, saying
Mhm.
like, I hate when people try to act like I don't know what words mean. Incest is not always rape. And then underneath that said, definitely got blocked because you don't know what words mean and you're trying to be a smartass when you're really just stupid. I get the point she is trying to make, but that does not change the definition of those words. There are too many instances of consensual incest to be saying this, unfortunately. Okay.
Mhm.
And so she has like 80,000, something like that, followers on Threads. Like, I knew that when I saw that she blocked me. And when she blocked me in the middle of me responding, I was like, oh God. And so I
Mhm.
went to try to look at her account, is how I saw that she even like posted the things that I said again. And I was like, okay, so some of her followers are probably going to say some stuff. And it turned into, for basically like a week,
Mhm.
them just showing up and literally over and over again saying that I was stupid, saying that I don't know the definition of words, saying that I'm too emotional about this, and and that I don't, and that consensual incest does exist, to the point that people were Googling the definition of incest in legal definitions and then screenshotting it onto a comment of mine as if that proved anything at all. Like, literally, and every single person, they were like, why are you like responding to all these? Why are you like, requoting all these? I'm like, because I want people to know what parasocial relationships do to people. You're saying that I'm too emotional because she said that I'm too emotional. You're saying
Mhm.
that I don't know the definition of words, and you're trying to justify what, like, incest being consensual, which, by the way, people having that idea is why that dad only got 3 years in prison. Like, the
Yeah.
reason why prison sentences are shorter is because people have like gaslit themselves for generations about this idea that you can like choose to do that, and actually want to. And so that's why the sentences are only there if they think that you could give a baby birth defects, basically, most of the time, is why those laws were even there in the first place. It wasn't actually about what you were doing was wrong. That's why in some states, including mine, it's legal to be in a relationship with like a like direct family if you're infertile or you're too old to have children, because the laws were written just about children having birth defects. And because they knew that that happened in like the royal family in England and going back throughout history when they did that kind of stuff, that eventually they stopped because the birth defects got so bad that they were dying at such a young age. Like King Tut died when he was 14 because he had all of these horrible chronic physical like disabilities because of his family doing that. And so it's like this wild thing where they are showing up trying to defend her, because I'm sure they saw her say that and something went off in their brain that like, that doesn't seem right. Like, her saying that doesn't feel good, because that's not what people usually think about incest and stuff. And so the only way to like continue having this parasocial thing with her and liking her just like as a person on Threads, if they like her music, whatever, is that they have to find a way for me to be in the wrong and for me to be like a histrionic, like out of control, stupid person that's too emotional and can't like see the truth of what's happening in front of me. And so they just kept repeating her words, literally her words, over and over again, and like could not stop themselves enough to think like, she shared that article because she was because the family was upset that that person was only going to prison for 3 years. And now they're sitting here like red in the face arguing that he deserved to only go to prison for 3 years because incest can be legal. And it's like that, like there was no like connection. And I would like tell them that, like, why are you arguing against this? This is why people only go to prison for a short amount of time. Like, why would you be like wanting this to be legal? To the point that this one guy that finally like freaked me out enough to just like not want to do it anymore for a while. And the reason why he freaked me out is because he was being like he was a guy, and he was being like very like overly aggressive, like. But it was also that he was making up a narrative about who we are out of literally nothing. Like, I don't even think he knew our names. Like our actual names, like our first name, Shannon and Mandy. I doubt that if I asked him, what's my name? Who am I right now? Like, do you know that this account has 2 different people on it? Like, who am I? Who am I? Like, I don't even think he would be able to answer that because he honestly had no idea.
Yeah.
But he showed up making fun of the name of our account, which okay. But he showed up saying it's time for you to shut the fuck up while I explain to you exactly what you are as a human being.
Oh
And
my
then
God. Yeah.
Aaliyah is the person that he's defending that like responded to me and blocked me, that caused this whole like mess for a week. He said Aaliyah called out that one specific case. She was not speaking generally. You know this, however. I know this because I know your type, desperate for fame. Nobody's who intentionally start a fight with people bigger than you. You're intentionally trying to smear someone else's name for your own fame. You're bandwagoning off of her fame with bullshit. And I replied and I was like, I desperately need you to know that absolutely no one in the history of the world is trying to become famous based off of a comment on Threads.
Yeah.
And I don't know who she is. And also, it's just anyone who has watched any of our videos before would know we don't want to be famous. Do you know that we've had like many crises, like weekly crises about letting people perceive us because
Yeah.
we don't want actually to be famous? Like I tried to make videos for like 4 years without anyone seeing my face, and none of them ever did well, and so I just like gave up and started doing this where people had to like see me. But we want people to like learn the things that we've learned in an easier sort of way to like make their life not so difficult. But if I could do that without anyone ever knowing who I was, that would be like the best thing in the entire world. I don't want people to know who I am. It scares me. Like anytime like a video of ours does any well at all, I rewatch it and get terrified that like we did something wrong or somebody's going to attack us or somebody's going to somehow find out where we live or something. Because people are weird sometimes online, like this guy. But it was just like nothing about if you've ever watched anything we've ever even made or like seen any of the posts that we make, it's pretty obvious that we like do things that like work against that idea.
Yeah.
Like if we wanted to be famous, we could talk about the same stuff, but just make it like super clickbaity and gross. Like there are people that do that. It wouldn't be hard. But we don't want to. And it was just this idea that he was like coming up with this whole narrative that we were attacking her on purpose just because we wanted to like become famous or something, like that she was this person that we wanted to like piggyback off of. And I was like, she's just a random person that I saw on Threads that said something that I didn't understand. And so I said something. There isn't like a whole narrative going on, but it's like scary in like a parasocial world because that stuff, people just like build off of that idea of who you think they are. And that person was like very angry at us, kept saying very angry, like vaguely like threatening sort of language sort of things based on this idea that we were lying on purpose to try to make her look bad. Like she told an incest victim that incest is consensual and that I'm too emotional about it. I need to get over it. And he found a way to make her the victim of that situation when people had been harassing me about it for a week at that point. And that's like how parasocial things can like warp in people's minds without them realizing. Like those people needed her to be right. Realize then later on that you're wrong. You have to deal with the consequences of what you said.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always think that whenever I'm like even leaving a comment on somebody's video on TikTok, I just think like, what if I'm wrong about this? Would I be okay with saying this to this person? And a lot
Yeah.
of times I go back to a video and just delete what I said because I'm like, no, I wouldn't. If this ends up not being right because the internet can like clickbait things, can cut out context to make it look like it's one thing when it's not, and I don't want to do that. And so I just like delete stuff if I'm worried that I might like regret what I said later on. So that's like why we wanted to talk about it, I guess, because I was just like that was a lot. That
It
was
was.
too much. And I don't want to, it was just like, I don't know why. That was a lot of like negativity about something that I didn't think that people would argue that much about if incest is sexual assault.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not even worth harping over the point that we had. It's all there on threads, like, but there's something to be said about the fact that people were so ready to just defend this person that they didn't realize that the arguments they were making were essentially just making a case that consensual incest is a thing we should respect and like talk about and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
no, thank you.
Said to some of those people, like, I understand that it's difficult to realize that you were talking to a victim and believed them when they said that they weren't a victim, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you're yelling at me about that. Like, I understand that feels bad, but like you need to learn when to like back off
Mm-hmm.
and not take it out on a stranger that didn't do anything. Okay. So the one of the other like more low key versions, because there is this more serious version, but I have to like work myself up to that or else I'm gonna like cry or something. Is that Taylor Swift? And
Yeah.
because I feel like out of like all the different groups of people, when you think of like toxic parasocial relationships, the Barb's is definitely one, but we've talked about kind of the Barb's in one of our other episodes before, but like Swifties are the other one. Because people generally just have it as like an accepted fact, which it is, that like there are people who are consider themselves Swifties are so parasocially attached to Taylor Swift, they will literally defend her about absolutely everything,
Mm-hmm.
anything that she's ever done. They will find some way to make it okay when they wouldn't be okay with that with literally anyone else on the planet. Like the whole thing with her last CD became this huge thing because they were fighting so hard
Mm-hmm.
against the idea of like, I'm sorry, but as somebody who did, and you did marketing too,
Yeah.
like I did a little bit of social media marketing, helping a friend of mine for a couple of years, and you did marketing as your job before. There are so many meetings, like an
Mm-hmm.
abundance of meetings before you decide anything. Like so many people look at like pictures of things that you're going to make as merch or whatever you're going to do before it ever gets like decided where they actually do it. And so
Yeah.
her like lightning
Oh my
necklace.
gosh. Yeah, that looked like SS symbols.
Yeah, and I
Which
remember
that is, for
yeah.
anyone who doesn't know, it's like the zombie, or not the zombie, the Nazi, the Nazi, like, stormtroopers are based off of them. It's like their army, their,
The SS.
yeah.
Like the SS is what the like secret basically like Nazi army was called, like their version of like the CIA or something. And their symbol was the two lightning bolts kind of like upright like that where they looked like S's. If you looked at it, it's a very distinct style. It's not even that like she was trying to do that on purpose, but it was more that her marketing team, especially as somebody like her, had to have known that people might think that, because that's the first thing that like popped in my head when I saw a picture of it, even before it
Yeah.
became a thing. I was just like, oh my God. And so they were clearly okay with people maybe thinking that, and it become making like it become like a thing. It became like a much bigger thing that I'm sure than they actually wanted. I'm sure they just wanted people to like create like online like discourse or whatever. And didn't realize that there already would be online discourse because that CD sucks. And so there already were people talking about that CD already in a negative way, and that just like made it even worse. But I'm sure that's what they were trying to do, which already feels kind of gross. But the thing with her that's fascinating to me is that will forever come up, and it's annoying for Olivia Rodrigo, but it's what she did to Olivia Rodrigo.
It is such old drama. Why are these journalists bringing it up now?
Because Olivia Rodrigo's team wants them to. Let's just critically think about this and not be naive. It's called media strategy.
How hard is it to say, I am not beefing with Taylor Swift, or there is no bad blood between me and Taylor Swift?
It bothers Swifties so bad. And like every time Olivia Rodrigo comes out with new music, they like relitigate it to try to find a way to like make it make more sense or make it okay or make Olivia the one in the wrong. And there's like literally nothing. There's nothing about that story to make her be in the wrong. And they just are so uncomfortable by it that they like find themselves literally, I see videos sometimes of people literally grasping at straws to try to find something wrong with Olivia Rodrigo. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with this like girl. And so if you don't know the story that I'm talking about, essentially what it was Olivia Rodrigo was a super big Taylor Swift fan. She grew up listening to her music. It makes sense. Like she writes a lot of kind of self like confession sort of songs in the way that Taylor Swift does too. And so you can see like where that inspiration likely came from. And when she was like a baby, like when she was like 17 or 18, when driver's license became like huge because TikTok discovered it, like that was not like a planned thing. Like somebody on TikTok just like made an audio of it and it just became like a huge trend before. And that was back when people thought that TikTok was just like an app for like kids to make up dances. It was before like people really took it seriously. And so it like people like us as like the people literally made that girl famous, as famous as she is. It wasn't like a concerted marketing campaign the way that it is usually with big stars like this. But when that happened, she was like 18. She was like 17, 18, like graduating high school, I think. And when her first CD came out, she gave credit to Taylor Swift and Jack Antonoff for interpolation, which is basically that she used like the same chord progression as them on a song to like inspire her making another song. That's a very common thing for artists to do. But it came out somewhere, or I forget when this story came out, but I do remember seeing it and being like, what the fuck? Because this was back when everybody really liked Taylor Swift because Evermore and Folklore are really, really good CDs, like really, like just really, really good songwriting. And so that's what people heard of her last, and so they really liked her at this time. And she threatened to sue Olivia Rodrigo for like copyright credits for one of her songs because she said that it sounded like one of her songs. She said she threatened to sue her over her song Deja Vu, which is still in tons of TikTok videos like every day.
Strawberry ice cream in Malibu. Don't act like we didn't do that shit too. You're trading jackets like we used to do. Everything is outrageous.
And said that it sounded similar to her song Cruel Summer, which it doesn't.
I'm drunk in the back of the car, and I cried like a baby coming home from the bar. Said I'm fine, but it wasn't true.
And the reason why I think she did that, or like justified it, I suppose, is, and I think thought that she would get away with it, is because this was when Scooter Braun had sold her masters. And so people had a lot of like empathy for her at the time of like losing her masters and like wanting her to get them back one day, which she did last year. But like, so the idea of like her losing her music rights was like something that people were empathetic towards. And so I think she thought that she would like get away with this, but Olivia was 18 and a super huge Taylor Swift fan, and like they interacted a lot. Like when when her CD came out and it was like charting close to Taylor Swift, she like posted about it on her Instagram, and like Taylor Swift like commented underneath the post, like calling her like her child and things like that. Like he sent her like jewelry that looked like jewelry she wore in like some of her biggest music videos that Olivia posted, because she was like obviously so excited to be getting things from this
Yeah.
person that she idolized, only to come out literally like a month after that she threatened to sue her so that she could get more money from a brand new artist who was not even out of high school, really, was just graduated, 18 years old, like a baby artist who just put out her first CD. You're a billionaire. You're a billionaire. And
Yeah.
you're threatening to sue an 18-year-old super fan of yours because you can? Because that's basically why. Like, there's really not a reason. There's not a reason. The songs don't sound similar. She's not copying you at all. Olivia Rodrigo is very much like her own musical, like, personality, I guess is the way to put it. Like, yeah, she does like the like self-confession sort of songs, but she doesn't talk about who any of her songs are about. She never opens that door ever. She and a lot of, and it's like the polar opposite of Taylor Swift, where Taylor Swift songs is all about like, look at this horrible person and the things that they did to me. But Olivia Rodrigo is like, yeah, these people hurt me, but also look at the things that I did that led to the situation happening in the first place. Like in her song, like Driver's License, when she's talking about Sabrina Carpenter, actually, and like the boy that was like messing with both of them at the time, that was on their High School Musical, like Disney show they're on at the time when she wrote that and put out that CD. In the song lyrics, she's talking about like, oh, she's so beautiful and I'm jealous of her. But she's like saying it in a way of like downplaying herself, of like, there's nothing actually wrong with this girl. I'm just jealous of her because she gets to spend more time with you, and I wish I could spend that time with you. It's a complete opposite of how Taylor Swift writes stuff. Like, she never victimizes herself in that same sort of way. She's more looking at it as like, there are things that I need to work on kind of stuff. She's very aware of like her faults, essentially. And so it's really fascinating to watch Taylor Swift fans try to justify that. There's nothing to justify that, especially when her persona or whatever for a while, at least until her last CD came out, was that she was like, you know, a nice person and it would like, you know, get along with like younger artists and stuff. And there's been a lot of stories about her through the years that went against that, of course. But if you were her fan, that's like what she wanted you to think of her as like the nice, normal girl that was like unpopular in high school and was like writing songs about all these like struggles that everybody had that was really relatable. To find out that she did something like threw her power around to like a young girl who's also, it's so weird. Like Olivia Rodrigo even did like ads for one of her like Taylor's version albums.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're using her in as like promotion for your CD and then threatening to sue her like a month later.
Famous people being fans of other famous people is like this thing that I've noticed people are starting to find more endearing lately, because like the Billie Eilish thing that happened where Hailey Bieber set up a thing where she brought Billie Eilish on stage, and she used to be a believer, and so she had Justin come out and sing to her. And it was like this whole thing, and everybody is all of a sudden like happy about Hailey Bieber again, which is a whole other subject. But like it can be very endearing to have, you know, like that kind of situation where someone's younger than you and they're a fan of you, and like Taylor had an opportunity, and I feel like she actually even took it, because didn't she help launch Sabrina Carpenter a little bit by like having her open?
Yeah, that's like the thing too, is that like Taylor Swift, the whole like her whole thing of her masters being sold was like Scott Borchetta and Scott and like what's his name, Scooter Braun, getting together to like screw her over. And so it's like, you know what it's like to be screwed over by more powerful people in the industry, and so you go out of your way to do it to somebody else who looks up to you and would like worship the ground that you walked on if you let them walk near you. And especially, she made Sabrina Carpenter her opening act on the Eras tour when people thought that her and Olivia Rodrigo didn't get along.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like this weird stuff. Like Olivia's album is coming out soon, and so people are obviously talking a lot about her. And there's like this weird like paparazzi picture where they're both leaving like the same like Paul McCartney concert. And Taylor Swift was like walking out when Olivia Rodrigo was. And so of course Taylor Swift fans were like, oh, they're friends now. And I'm like, there's no way in hell that Olivia Rodrigo would ever want to be near that woman. She's traumatizing to her, I'm sure. And I'm like, that's Taylor Swift trying to be in a photo with her to make it look like they get along. Because every time Olivia Rodrigo has a new album come out, people remember this happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they bring it up. Because one of the things that's awful is that after she did that, the publisher for Paramore also did the same thing, where they said that one of Olivia's songs was too similar to one of their songs, and she had to give up 50% credit for another one of her biggest hits to them. And like the Hayley Williams said that, like, I didn't want her to do that. Like, I didn't want our publisher to do that, but they did it. And so now it's like this thing that every time she puts out music, people compare it to something, to some other song that's out there that's like well known. Like this idea that Olivia Rodrigo like steals her music from somebody else, that she's not good enough to write her own music herself, is like something that is out there because Taylor Swift fans are the ones making these videos.
No, like one thing I've always appreciated about you is that you've been so forthcoming about your influences and people who are your heroes and what you're trying to live up to. And not all artists are like that. Some people are very stingy with giving credit or citing influence. And I think you've remained open-hearted about that, but it's come back to bite you a couple times in terms of songwriting credits or album covers or people trying to call you out for borrowing or whatever it is, borrowing a little too much. How have you pushed through that, those what I assume were pretty hard times in your creative vision being called into question, and how do you remain open with what it is that inspires you when stuff like that has happened?
Yeah, I think it's a really hard time, like just personally, but I don't know. I'm a fangirl. I love music, and like nobody can like take that away. That sounds so cheesy, but like I love music, and I feel so lucky that I get to do what I do, and I like love so many songs, and you know, I've grown up being surrounded with awesome music and awesome bands, and like I truly just do feel so lucky, and I love writing songs, and like that's just I would be writing songs if nobody listened and everyone hated it and everyone thought I was bad. I would still be writing songs because it's what I like love to do.
But I like that you call yourself a fangirl, because I feel like some artists, especially at your level, are ashamed to identify themselves that way.
You gotta be a fan. It's so boring to not be a fan of music. There's so much good music to be a fan of.
They're the ones saying it, and it's like she didn't steal shit. She wrote these songs. The songs you say sound like something else don't sound like something else. Her song didn't sound like Cruel Summer. Her other song doesn't sound like Paramore. But like she's an 18-year-old girl at that time that is now being labeled as somebody who steals from other artists when she writes all of her own music. She writes her own actual music. She writes her own lyrics. She takes like many years between albums because she actually takes the time to like write good music instead of just like churning out a new album every year just to like write some slop to make money. That's gonna just keep coming up forever because people really like Olivia Rodrigo. There's no reason not to. She has a lot of boundaries between her and her fans. She doesn't talk about her private life in a way that could cause like weird things to happen. Like she's writing a whole CD about her and her boyfriend breaking up, but the songs that have come out about it so far are more about like how she had problems, about things about herself that she didn't like, that being with him made her realize were still a problem, and being in love with somebody wasn't going to just magically fix those problems, that
Yeah.
she has to like actually like figure out what they are and like work on them herself, and that a relationship like that just like made her realize those things more obviously. She's not writing an album actually like how Taylor Swift would, like being like, he's a horrible person and I hope he dies. And like maybe she does have some songs like that, I'm sure, because they broke up. There are some things like that, but it's just she has like the people that she's friends with, that people know of, that are like somewhat famous and are not. But she has like, there's a big separation between like her public persona and her private life. And she's obviously put in effort to do that. Like she's still very young. She's only 23 at
Yeah.
this point. And when Taylor Swift was 23, was when like Red was coming out, and she wrote like a whole CD about Jake Gyllenhaal. And like I love that CD, and there's a lot of songs about him that I really like. And I'm glad that she wrote songs about him and John Mayer, because they definitely like groomed her. They were like 30 something and dating her when she was 19. But still, it's just a very they're in very different places. They're not actually the same artist, but it's interesting to watch Taylor Swift's camp and her fans like know that if people like really like keep bringing this up, like anytime somebody says something about Taylor Swift online that somebody doesn't like and her fans attack them, they always bring up Olivia Rodrigo, and they're always like, why did she do that to that little girl? And that immediately just like stops them, because they can't say anything. Yeah. Why did she threaten to sue a 18-year-old little girl when she was putting out her first album that was the biggest fan of her, that now doesn't even mention her name? Use the internet as like a power tool, and they just like go online and think that if they can just like say what they think happened, and even if they know they're lying, they feel like they can get a bunch of people on their side, and it doesn't matter if the other person is actually telling the truth or not.
Of this trial, a medieval orgy of hatred, and referred to it as misogynist mob behavior. And I've seen that talking point a lot with the way this trial was consumed. And I think there was absolutely some misogyny in how Amber Heard was treated on social media, but not all of it.
The example that I realized that this gave me permission to talk about this again is Amber Heard, but particularly Emily D. Baker, with the whole Johnny Depp Amber Heard trial that happened in the US a couple years ago. Like there's all these like misogynistic smear campaigns that have been going on lately, particularly the last, year or so, but that one is the worst I've ever seen. By far. And Emily D. Baker is a huge part of why, and it's the whole parasocial thing with Johnny Depp. And so I wanted to try to like explain what that was like, and try to like almost, if there's people out there, I know there's people out there still that think that Amber Heard is like an abuser, or that mutual abuse is a real thing, which isn't true. And I just like want to try to like almost try to explain it in a way to make people like, now that it's been many years, to have people like realize that. Like I have seen people on TikTok say like the ultimate test, if you fall for a smear campaign or not, is like what you think about Amber Heard. And there are more people that defend her a lot more. Like I used to be terrified to defend her, even before this trial happened. That was one thing I wanted to mention, was just to kind of go over the general timeline of their relationship, because that's something that has, I think, gotten like lost along the psychoticness that was this situation. Johnny Depp was 45 when they met in like 2009. Amber Heard is a year younger than me. And so Johnny Depp was 45 when they met in 2009. She was 23. Just let's start there. He's
Yeah.
45. She is 23 years old. She's the age of Olivia Rodrigo right now. What would you think about the person dating Olivia Rodrigo if they were 45? Let's just start there. Number one, let's start there. And they were in a relationship until like 2015 when they got married, and then they were only married for a little over a year when they got divorced. And part of the divorce was that he just had to sign something that basically was him admitting that these things happened. That's it. That's all she wanted him to do, was just like admit that the abuse that he put her through just happened. Like, he didn't have to say anything else or do anything else, or she wasn't even asking for anything really. She just wanted him to admit that it did happen. When their divorce was final, that part of the divorce did like get out to like the press, and pictures of her with like black eyes and things like that was out there. And I will always remember this day on Twitter. I think it was in 2016 or 2017. Those years are kind of blurry, so I can't remember which year, and I refuse to like look it up because looking at the stuff that I did already for this was bad enough. But somewhere in there, I think in 2016, the pictures of her with like bruises on her face came out. And every day for like the next week, one of his famous friends would just get on Twitter and like tweet about defending him. And they're all like the same general like statement. Like, Paul Bettany was one of those people who is Vision in the Marvel movies, which I've always had a grudge against that character because he plays him. Like, during the trial, it came out that Johnny Depp was like texting Paul Bettany, and they were coming up with a plan of what they would do to Amber Heard's body and how they would kill her. Like, the different ways that they would kill her. Like that one quote where he's saying that he would like R-word her corpse if he found her dead. He was having that conversation with Paul Bettany.
Mr. Depp, you said, "I will fuck her burnt corpse afterwards to make sure she is dead."
He ruined his career. How? The literal moment that it came out in the public, all of his famous friends immediately came to his defense. And from like that day on, there were people regularly on Twitter, there would be like hashtag campaigns of people saying Amber Heard is lying. Or Johnny Depp is innocent. I saw them doing it for literally years. And to the point that sometimes I would try to interact with them, and they were so vicious. Oh my God. They were so over the top vicious defending Johnny Depp, and particularly about this situation, that I was like scared to mention them. Like, I remember even before this trial even happened, that was the reputation that they had. One of the trauma therapists that I follow still on social media, at the time back in like 2021, she was like finishing up graduating from school and getting her watch hours done so that she could be like a fully fledged therapist. But she did a video back then in like 2021 where she read through all the documents of Johnny Depp's trial in the UK, and was like, he's the obvious abuser. She's like, it's not even like hard to figure out that he is. And she explained using like all of the things she knows about trauma and things like that from being a therapist, she worked as a DV counselor for many years and things like that. She stopped doing it because it was too hard to like watch people just get like hurt over and over again. But that's still a huge part of her practice and everything. And so she explained all of it, and she got harassed so bad. It went on for literally like a year. Like, his fans would leave her hate comments. A year later, they got 2 of her accounts banned on TikTok, even before this trial ever even happened, because of how like severe they were. Like, one of the scariest moments of my life during the trial was when I went on Twitter and saw that somebody found the videos that she made. That had, somebody must have saved them, like one of his fans must have saved them somewhere because that account had been banned. And they reposted them in the middle of all of that fervor. And at the time, she didn't have a TikTok account because her account got banned and she didn't want to deal with it. And I messaged her and told her that they had posted her videos on Twitter. And I was like, I've never in my life been so glad that you don't have a Twitter account right now, because you would be in actual danger if people knew that they could find you because of how intense all that stuff was.
The perpetrators are talking about the abuse. They will focus on single incidents where the victim lashed out. Like, they will hyper focus on a very specific incident where the victim acted out in some specific way, because those are the incidents where they were able to push the victim into lashing back out. Whereas victims tend to talk about a larger overall pattern of coercion and control. And
the basis of the trial was that Amber Heard wrote this op-ed in 2018 with the Washington Post. I spoke up against sexual violence and faced our culture's wrath. That has to change. She put that out in like December of 2018, which was when Me Too stuff was like really intense then during Trump's first presidency. And so she just wrote an article about that. She never even named Johnny Depp in the article itself. It wasn't actually necessarily about him. It was about how people responded to her coming forward about talking about this sort of stuff that happened to her. It honestly wasn't really about him. Like, yeah, he was the one that she experienced that with, but it was more like what the public like reacted to this young girl, like at the time, saying that about someone who had a lot of power and how that made them feel. And that was at the time that she wrote this was when Kavanaugh was put into the Supreme Court. And we had to go through a week, which was also horrendous, of his sexual assault victim sitting there saying what happened to her, and then them putting him in the Supreme Court anyway and saying that she was lying. And him saying on TV that he just likes drinking beer a lot. And other things like that. And so it was a very like good timed thing for her to say that sort of thing. That is what he sued her over. He tried to say that her writing that op-ed where she never even says his name was defamation. He chose to do the lawsuit in the state of Virginia because they are one of the only states that will live stream a trial.
Oh gosh. Yeah. I remember that being an aspect people talked about.
Because I looked up like defamation because I was like, jurisdiction. Because I was like, how did he get jurisdiction? Which is like where you prove that you can have like a lawsuit in a certain state because you prove that certain parts of like the lawsuit happened in that state where they are the ones that like are responsible for it. Because I was like, neither one of them have ever lived in Virginia. And I was like, so how could he possibly have convinced them to let him do it there? This is like the flimsiest thing I've ever heard in my life. He said that the reason that they came up with was that the computer, like the digital servers for the Washington Post, some of them are located in Fairfax County, Virginia. And that was how they like was able to get the trial to happen there.
That's
where
crazy.
he could then live stream the entire thing. Because the main part of it during the trial itself was that there are all these like burner accounts that were like, you see them now doing that with like other people too, where they were like clipping certain clips to make her look as bad as possible without any context at all. And most people didn't ever actually watch the trial. They just like watched these clips that got reposted over and over and over again online. That convinced them that like Amber Heard's a bitch and her like attorneys are stupid and his attorneys are great and he's just a victim, because they cut out like all of the context and nobody went looking for it. Because when people are in the middle of a misogynistic hate campaign, they don't care about like what the actual truth is. And so the whole thing with Emily D. Baker is that she was a former district attorney in California from like 2004 to 2020 in like LA. She quit and then started doing this YouTube thing. And started doing YouTube videos where she like gives her opinion on like whatever popular case is happening at the time. And I will say that's a little weird to be like a retired district attorney and to immediately like pivot during COVID and start wanting to be like a influencer, because even before like this trial like happened, she had like all these things and was clearly trying to be like it's weird how similar she is to Nancy Grace, and people look at her in a much different way than they look at Nancy Grace, and they look at her as like a reputable, smart person, when people usually just make fun of Nancy Grace because they know that she's like dramatic and ridiculous and stuff. Especially during the trial, she would post, she had live videos every single day. Like every single day for like, I'm looking at some of them, 3 hours, 6 hours, 4.5 hours, 5.5 hours, 4 hours. Like, so people would just, instead of watching the actual trial, they would watch her live streams where she would give her opinion on what happened during the trial. And if you go back to her YouTube channel, one of her first videos, like 6 or 7 videos in, that she posted in like 2021 before this trial happened, the one she posted a video about his trial in the UK. And she thought that the people in the UK got it wrong and that he wasn't a wife beater. And I was like, okay, so you went into this with an agenda. You're not like an unbiased, person. Like, I'm just an attorney. I'm just a former DA that's giving my opinion on the law. No. You went into this situation already knowing you wanted people to believe what you believed. You wanted people to believe that Johnny Depp was innocent and was being railroaded by a 25-year-old girl.
I hate to say low bar, but the threshold of more likely than not for substantially true means that a diligent paper doing its work that isn't just making wild accusations is going to win a case like this, because they're going to be able to say it's more likely than not that this is, mostly true. So that is a difficult hurdle to overcome. We will see when we apply the US standard what happens next.
Hello, this is Editing Shannon here. I'm here to explain what this clip is really saying. So, essentially what Emily D. Baker is saying there is that the laws in the UK make it easier for like the newspaper to prove that Johnny Depp was guilty of being a wife beater, which is what they put in the newspaper that he was suing them over. And so that explains why he was found guilty, and it may be different in the US when the laws are different. That is factually incorrect. It is actually the other way around. In England, I'm saying the UK sometimes, and I apologize because I really don't know if it's the same everywhere in the UK or this is just an England specific thing, but I at least know in England that the laws are actually on the side of the plaintiff, where the defendant in defamation cases in England have all of the burden of proof. They have to prove that they did not do the thing that the person said they did, where in the US, it's on the burden of the plaintiff. They have to prove that the person knowingly lied, that they knew what they were saying was a lie and they said it anyway, and that lie cost you money. That is why it's so hard to prove defamation in the US, and cases don't happen very often. But in the UK, like, their laws are so lax that newspapers and such in the UK will not post when somebody is in prison, when they're a public figure, when their trial hasn't happened yet, if people don't know about it, because they're afraid of being like sued in defamation court for just saying what's going on. They had to like change some of their laws because they were so lax. The United States made up laws just specifically, and other countries too, to say that if you are found guilty of defamation in England, in the UK, that doesn't actually mean anything legally in their country because it's so flimsy. And so Johnny Depp should have had a slam dunk case in the UK. They were the ones, the newspapers were the ones that had to prove everything, which is why they were the ones like hearing evidence from Amber Heard that was sealed, that was never released, but the people who decided it heard everything, and that's why they were the ones putting on this case. And like his supporters were like, well, why is he on trial in a way that Amber Heard, it doesn't have to prove anything. It's like, because that's what the laws in England say. That is, I'm sure, why he decided to do that case in England, because he thought that he for sure would win there, because the laws are very much on his side. The fact that he didn't is a big thing. And it's especially a big thing when Emily D. Baker, who is purported to be a subject matter expert in legal courses, has 20 years of experience at least, and is on the internet as a reputable source to explain these things to layman people who do not understand the legal process, is like at absolute best like misconstruing things to mislead her audience, and at absolute worst outright just lying because she doesn't want to admit what's going on. And like, she's a person, maybe she thought that Johnny Depp was innocent and she didn't realize and didn't want to admit it, and was like trying to find a way around it. But that thing she just said is not true, and there's no way that she doesn't know it's not true, because why would she make an hour-long video talking about this case if she never even looked into the defamation laws in England? If me, as someone who used to be a legal assistant and was horrible at that job, but still has some information from doing that for 5 years, knew how to look up what the defamation laws were in the UK when that case happened, and saw what they were, and knew that it meant a lot that he lost there, I don't know how somebody whose entire career is talking about law on the internet wouldn't know something like that. And so you have to think about all the things that she did then during the actual trial and what that really means.
He was known for like destroying hotel rooms, destroying things, not caring about anything. His reputation when he did movies is that even back when he did like Pirates of the Caribbean and before that, was that he would have like they have like an earpiece in so they can like hear like the sound, and like people sometimes will like talk to them with their earpiece on to give them like direction or whatever. He always had one of those in because somebody would literally be telling him his lines, because he never memorized any of his lines for any of the movies he was in. And so somebody's job at every movie he was in was literally to tell him every single line right before he had to say it, and every single scene, because he couldn't be bothered to learn his lines, and would sometimes show up to set drunk, and they would just have to deal with it. And it's like, this is not somebody that was like together and with it.
Lily Rose Depp, his daughter, who also has like somewhat of a acting career, she also has said things about him that like back up a lot of what Amber said, and I think she's actually said some positive things about Amber before too.
Yeah.
So this is an excerpt from the UK trial. I think the question, Mr. Depp, was that your daughter recognized at about this time. We are talking about February 2014, when they were going to get married in the next year, that Miss Heard was a good influence on you. She believed that at the time. Do you agree with that statement? Yes, she believed that at the time. Just looking at page 25 of the text, your daughter to you, you've been a better dad to Jack and I since she has been around, and she was helping with the alcohol problem. I just see what a positive effect she had on you, and I'm afraid those things will leave with her. Please don't write her off right now. She may surprise you and explain herself. You say that to Lily Rose. I'm not going back to booze. We will see what happens with her, all right? Yes. Now, I ought to just complete the series. At the top of 26, what about you as a dad? You've been so much better since she's been around. We have talked about how, for a couple of years, you weren't around for us, and that changed when Amber came into your life. I don't want to go back to that. I see that, she says again, but you have to acknowledge and know what a good influence she's been, and the fact that she's changed you for the better. You see that, right? All right? So that is it from your daughter to you? Yes, and this is 4th February. 4th February. Lily Rose Depp shouldn't have to have these things out there in the public eye. These are things that I think Johnny Depp should have thought of before going after Amber, knowing that these things would be brought to light of things that his children said to him and what they thought. This is not something that the public, none of this should have ever been in the public eye in the way that it is, because it doesn't actually help anyone except for him.
And like during the trial, her and like her mom and other people like that like said things, but it was because part of the whole thing with Emily D. Baker is that I'm not joking that literally every single video I ever saw anywhere, like YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, everywhere, across Twitter, every part of social media, they used her as a justification for what they were doing. I'm like, oh, Emily D. Baker used to be an attorney, and so she says that Amber Heard is lying, so she's like an unbiased source, and so obviously we can trust what she says. Oh, Emily D. Baker used to be an attorney, and so she can say that the attorneys for Amber Heard are doing a bad job, and Johnny Depp's are doing a great job, and call it these things she thinks makes them look bad. And I can like attack these people as much as I want and not feel bad because this person that's supposed to be an unbiased source says so.
I wanted to debunk some of the things that were going viral at the time of this case, just for posterity's sake. Why not? The first one is that Amber Heard stole her rape story from her assistant, Kate James. Here is the excerpt from the UK trial where Kate James is talking about the story that Amber Heard stole. What she is actually talking about here is not the story overall of the entire rape story. What she's talking about is that they had a conversation where she was saying to Amber, like, I call myself a survivor instead of like a victim. And then when Amber was in an interview and she told the story, she said that she made it about herself and she like thought that was gross. And like she obviously can feel that way, but when two people that are going, especially considering that her assistant was like living in the house with her, with Johnny Depp, and saw the abuse that he was putting her through, they were talking about this because she knew that she was going through that. And so for her to say later that like, you know, she thought that this girl was like helping her and like said that to her to help her, you know, figure out things that were going on with her. She can feel whatever she wants to feel about it later on, but it's not hard to think that Amber would think that was somebody that was saying that to her to like help her realize that she is a survivor. And for what it's worth, Kate James later testified in the U.S. case about the details of the story of when Johnny Depp raped Amber Heard. And there is no legal way that she should have actually known of the details of what Amber Heard said, because she has not publicly like told that story. The only place that she's ever told that story was to the UK trial. Like during the UK trial, she told it to the people that were like the judges and things that made the decision in that case. But those were sealed. That testimony was never, to this day, was never unsealed. The public has never seen that. There are some things from the UK trial that have been released as I'm showing, but there's a lot of stuff that hasn't. And so she later ended up asking Johnny Depp if she could, like, Kate did, the assistant, if she could, like, live in the house with him. And so it wouldn't surprise me if Johnny, like, used the fact that she needed a place to live when she lost her job with Amber because of her and Johnny breaking up and things like that. And got her to, like, say these things by giving her a place to live and, like, and turning her against Amber when she was in a vulnerable position. And, like, and because it doesn't seem like Amber didn't do, I don't know how else this girl found out about this story, you know? Without Johnny Depp's team telling her about it beforehand. And then the other thing that people brought up was the whole makeup thing. That became a very viral moment. Her attorney held up a makeup palette and as an example in court, saying she got used to putting on her makeup every day and covering up bruises. Amber Heard is most definitely not the only woman that is going through domestic violence that is able to cover up the different bruises and marks on her skin so that they don't notice. Kids also do this, by the way. There's literally people who make videos showing, like, survivors of this on TikTok I have seen, of people showing you how to cover up bruises and stuff on your body if you don't want people to see it yet. And so there is a makeup company who owned the palette that the attorney held up, who then used this moment to go really viral, saying that that makeup palette wasn't put out until 2017, which is after they got divorced. So obviously Amber Heard is lying. And, like, I think it's pretty obvious to notice the absolute, like, complete and total absurdity of that statement. That obviously her attorney was holding up a makeup palette, period, as an example, not the makeup palette that she had. Like, that Amber Heard only had one makeup palette that was only used during her times with Johnny Depp, and she, like, held on to it for all these years. Like, they got divorced in 2016 and she held on to that fucking makeup palette, what, until 2022? Please. But people were so desperate to find a way for her to be lying that they just went with that idea and posted a lot of really disgusting videos making fun of her, talking about her makeup routine, not being able to remember it, which is not surprising. It's actually a sign of abuse when you don't remember details like that. And then the last thing I had to mention was mutual abuse, because I know I referenced this earlier. There is a couples counselor, couples therapist that was seen both Amber and Johnny Depp that testified. The fact that that person saw both of them is the biggest red flag in the entire world, because as somebody who's been in therapy for 8 years, I will put things on the screen from, like, an actual couples therapist just to give somebody an example who is in the field itself. But it's very inappropriate for a therapist to see both people individually as in therapy while being their couples therapist, because there's a whole, like, power dynamic. If, like, one of them sees the other one more than the other one, you're not an unbiased source when you're hearing both of them talk about each other that way. In general, couples therapists are meant to see them only as a couple, and that if they want to see therapists by themselves, they have to go see somebody else because of very obvious conflicts of interest. But this therapist testified during the trial, and a lot of people believed her because she said things that they wanted to believe anyway, which is that mutual abuse can exist, which is, she said both of them were abusing each other. That is not possible. In an abusive dynamic, there is one person that is always the abusive one that has more power in the relationship, that is able to wield that power. Somebody sometimes losing it and yelling and screaming, throwing things, does not mean that they are abusing that person when the other person in their relationship has way more power than they do. I don't think it's hard for most people to understand how a girl in the mid to late 20s dating somebody in his late 40s and 50s that has been famous since she was, like, born basically, and is way more rich than her, and she's living in the houses with him, and he's the one with all of the famous friends that will back him up, and she doesn't have that sort of stuff in Hollywood. would not be at the same level of power as him. And so her doing those things is not the same as him. Mutual abuse is not real. That's not a real thing. And that is one of the most damaging things that this trial did, was actually say that. A victim getting, like, losing it and yelling and screaming at their abuser because they can't take it anymore is not them abusing them. That's not abuse. That is the things that abusers do that they then use against you the few times that you do that, to try to make you sound like you're a crazy person too. Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go back to our video now.
Like, to kind of circle back to toxic fandoms for a second, the way that, like, as you said, it almost serves as a litmus test of what people think about that whole situation. So many people were ready to just ride for him because Edward Scissorhands was my favorite movie, because I had a crush on Captain Jack Sparrow, or I forget what the name of his character was in Crybaby, or
I don't remember
whatever. You know,
anymore.
like, all of that. And I'll admit, the man looked pretty back in the 80s, sure. But why is it that we can admit that, like, Leonardo DiCaprio in my head has done a 180 from being the pretty boy to publicly, like, he's a joke now? You know, people make jokes about the fact that he seems to only go for women that are like 25 years old, and you're way too old for that now, bro. Brad Pitt for a second got some blowback for what he did to Angelina and their kids.
Yeah.
But it's circling back around where people are, like, talking about it mostly because of the fucking Christopher Nolan movie, and being like, this is Achilles. It's like, okay, but this is also an abuser. Why are we saying that he looks like a Greek hero, and people are especially comparing it to, because for some reason some group of people think that Elliot Page is going to end up being the Achilles in the Christopher Nolan movie, which, like, honestly, brave take, and I would take it since Achilles is canonically a twink. Like, you know, yeah, so people forget these things because they care about people for one reason or another, and sometimes it could be so superficial that it's just, I think this man is pretty, and I have had a crush on him since I was a child and barely knew what a crush was.
This video is for Johnny Depp. And if you're not Johnny Depp, that's okay. You can stick around. You don't have to scroll. I'm fun. Hi, Johnny. My name's Colette Reynolds. Oh.
For example, like, Taylor Swift fans are always, like, super ardently supporting her, but overall people aren't looking at her positively right now. That's how it was with him too. Like, he did the Pirates of the Caribbean movies and people really liked him, but after he did those movies, like, he, like, Hello Bonham Carter, and I forget his name now, the director she was with, that he did like 5 million movies with, they, like, broke up, and it was like this whole and people, like, was looking differently on them because a lot of their movies were, like, weird and, like, in like a racist sort of undertone sort of way. That was during those years when he played somebody who was a Cherokee, and he said that he was justified to do that because he was 1/16 Cherokee, and like, he did, like, the Harry Potter movies. He played Grindelwald.
Okay, yes, and I want to talk for a second, because the fandom in Harry Potter, I remember saying something. I remember the fandom being like, hey, we heard this guy may be an abuser, maybe he shouldn't be in your series, especially because domestic violence was a part of the J.K. Rowling rags to riches story.
Yes, it was.
And so she ended up defending him on, like, these are all alleged crimes. I've talked with him about it, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, I talked with him about it. He feels bad for beating his wife. And that was pretty much the end of it. And so before this trial, like, exploded into what it became, people didn't like him. They weren't, like, thinking nicely of him for, like, many years. Like, during those years, I used to tell people, like, I don't like Johnny Depp. I don't want to watch any of his movies anymore. And it makes me sad because I love the Pirates movies. But after Amber came forward about it, I just didn't want to. And you could get away with saying that you didn't like him during those years without even having to like go there with people, because his reputation was just kind of not good. He was known for like not working well on set and being a problem and making everybody's life hard and not even doing that well when he was doing movies. And then this trial happened, and Emily D. Baker goes live every single day and makes TikToks every single day, and suddenly over like a little bit of time, the tide went completely the other direction. Everyone believed Emily D. Baker. Everyone believed that Johnny Depp was a victim. Everyone, everywhere I looked, everyone, almost hardly anyone. I got scared to talk about it with people that I didn't know how they felt about it before this happened, because so many people that I thought wouldn't feel this way did. Like, there was a lot of like narcissistic abuse, like education, sort of, whatever you want to call that, like TikTok accounts at the time.
Yeah.
They all made videos during the trial saying that they were convinced that Amber Heard was a narcissist. You can't say that. You can't diagnose somebody with a personality disorder based on clips you see on TikTok. You can't do that with anybody, no matter what, but you especially can't when you don't even know who they are. And you're blaming it all on like very emotionally charged clips of her that you're seeing that are meant to put her in a bad light. Like, what are you doing? Just immediately believing that? But a lot of those accounts aren't really around anymore. And every time they left, I was like, goodbye. Like, you betrayed yourself and also your audience, even if they didn't realize it, by believing that, because it shows how easy it is to override every sense of what you know, to just hitch a ride on a harassment campaign that was destroying somebody's life for coming forward about her husband beating her when they were married, who was super famous and could cover it all up because of how famous he was. And that she was the only person that came forward about him because of how much power and stuff and connections he had, that nobody else wanted to deal with it. And she didn't even want to. She just wanted him to admit that it even happened and leave it at that. But that was such a bruise to his ego that he could not drop it. Like, he was the one continually talking about this stuff. She wasn't. But one of the accounts that is still kind of on the internet that like absolutely shocked me, but it shows how susceptible people are to things like this, is her name is Melissa Jo Stewart. At the time that this happened back in like 2022, she was graduating from law school to be a civil rights attorney. I followed her because she made a lot of ex-evangelical content, because she grew up in an evangelical culty sort of religious church where she got married when she was like 18 to somebody much older than her. She was a child sex abuse victim. She was abused by somebody when she was growing up at her church, and then was abused again by her older husband before they got divorced. And like during this time was when she told like the police in like 2020 about the person from her church that abused her. And so when the Johnny Depp trial was going on was around the time when her trial about her being sexually abused as a child was going on. And she still believed that Amber Heard was the abuser. Wow. She still believed it, despite all of that stuff. She's a civil rights attorney. She still is. And she believed that Johnny Depp was the victim. There is no realm in the world where an older, powerful man people would ever believe like his victim over him. That never happens. Never. People don't like victims. They don't like us. They don't like when we talk about the things that happened to us, unless we're crying about how sad we are. But even then, they get tired of hearing that after a while. They don't like us. They don't believe us. They definitely are not going to believe us if there's somebody more like attractive to them that they could listen to instead. Like during this trial, I saw so many videos of people saying that they wish that they were raped by Johnny Depp.
Yikes.
Like literally saying that on like the text in the video. I can't find them anymore because I am not doing that to myself, because it was bad enough looking at the things that I did look at today. I wasn't going to do that. But there are so many videos like that of people being like, I wish that Johnny Depp would sexually assault me. I wish that I would accuse Johnny Depp of raping me, and other things like that. And
Gross.
the like main overall point though that I really want to like drive home and just make people remember that this happened is that an audio clip of Amber Heard became a trend on TikTok to the point that the absolute biggest accounts were doing it, including Lance Bass from NSYNC. The clip that they were playing was her talking about how like, oh, my carpet, I was just like sitting on the couch and then I like got up and I just kind of fell over on the floor on the carpet, and I was like looking at the carpet and I was just thinking like when did this carpet get so dirty, and like what am I doing, like where am I right now, like what's going on. Like that's basically the 30-second like clip, and people like started making these videos of them like reenacting it by like sitting on a couch and then sitting on the floor and like staring at their carpet and like making fun of her for saying this. She was talking about the first time that Johnny Depp beat her. Johnny Depp beat her. And in the after effects of that, she sat on the floor and didn't know what to do. That is very common. When somebody that you love does something that is awful and violent and scary like that to you, you don't know what to do. You don't know how to react. You don't know what you like dissociate, and you just feel like my life isn't real right now because what just happened? Like, what's going on? That clip is her talking about Johnny Depp beating her for the first time and not knowing how to respond. And people made it a trending topic of making fun of her. Like, and there's more than that. There's like trending topics of people making fun of her, describing him sexually harassing and abusing her, like sexually assaulting her basically when they were married, and she's having a panic attack. Like, I literally watched those clips because I felt like I wanted to try, just because I knew I would actually believe her. And I watched a little bit more of them today, but she's having a panic attack on the stand. And there's all these videos of people putting text up on the screen saying like, oh, she's so funny. This is so funny. Like, there's all these videos that you can still find on TikTok of like Amber Heard and Johnny Depp funniest moments in trial. And some of those moments are in those compilations because they thought it was funny watching her have a panic attack because they don't know what it's like when somebody actually has a panic attack.
Hi, I'm back to do a couple things. One is to make the overall point that even if you believe in Emily D. Baker and Johnny Depp and that he is completely innocent and Amber Heard made all of these stories up, making fun of publicly the things that involve women that are in abusive relationships is a really disgusting thing to do, because the only thing it does is scare people that are actually going through that from coming forward. A lot of domestic violence shelters were overwhelmed with people when the Johnny Depp trial was happening and afterwards, with people scared now and staying in relationships that they don't want to be in anymore for longer because they were convinced that this would happen to them. And like, why wouldn't they think that when the internet turned into a giant machine doing that? Like, if you really thought that she was lying, you made it sure that you looked way more of a disgusting human being than she ever possibly could by how you acted during this trial.
And they'd been watching 6-hour-long live streams on Emily D. Baker's channel every single day that was then proliferated all over social media, like dehumanizing this woman as far as humanly possible. Like, it was very obvious watching her. She was like, they were trying to say that, like, she didn't show, she was like not crying. And so they thought that meant that she was like lying about the things that happened. And I'm like, that's what we actually look like. Like, she would like talk like normally, like quote unquote normally about these like horrible things on the stand. And then she would like pause and like look away and then start like crying or like hyperventilating to the point that she couldn't even like finish her sentence. And I'm like, that's what traumatized people do.
Didn't just remember all of those events like this. That's not how your memory or my memory works. You know, we were together for 5 years, almost 4.5. And it was a very violent, chaotic, at times very loving, emotional relationship. So as anyone can imagine, there was a lot going on, and unfortunately the violence became almost normal, especially towards the end. It was just, it's hard to say that now, but the violence was almost normal. And, you know, your brain does with trauma what it does, puts it away best you can.
You're like holding back like all of the actual like feelings because you're sitting in a room with the person that did this to you staring at you. And you know that you're on camera and everybody is watching you. You know that everyone's going to pick apart every single thing you do. There's so many sudden like experts in body language during that trial, especially. And so you know that they're going to do that. And so you're trying to keep it together because you're told forever that unless you're composed as a victim, nobody will believe you. If you show too much emotion, you have to show enough for them to think that you're sad. But if you show too much, then they think that you're lying. And so that's literally what it was. She was trying to like say what she needed to say to say the things that she had to say and get this over with. But then she got like overwhelmed by the things that she was saying because she was talking about her husband hitting her, her husband intimidating her, her husband, you know, sexually assaulting her, like making her do things sexually when she didn't want to, and he was scary and threatening her. And well, he's in the room with her, and so she would panic. And when people saw her panicking, they would laugh at her and say that she was pretending, that she was lying, that she was exaggerating. When I was like, that's what I look like.
Like he was on top of me, and I'm looking at him in his eyes, and I don't see him anymore. I don't see him anymore. It wasn't him. It was black. I've never been so scared in my life.
Sobbing through her second day of testimony, Amber Heard described Johnny Depp's alleged attacks in graphic detail.
My head was bashing against the back of the bar, and I couldn't breathe.
She accused Depp of slapping and kicking her during a private flight with others.
No one did anything. I felt so embarrassed that he could kick me to the ground in front of people.
And Heard broke down while claiming that during an alcohol-fueled rage in Australia, Depp sexually assaulted her.
I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this.
Her lawyers then showed images she took of the trashed home from that trip, including bloodstains.
There was blood on the carpet. I could see blood drips. My forearms were cut. Sorry. I'm sorry. I couldn't breathe. Please. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't get through to him. I couldn't get up. I couldn't get up.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes. We're sitting next to each other on the couch, and I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And I said, what does it say? And he said, it says wino. I didn't see that. I thought he was joking because it didn't look like it said that at all. And I laughed. I just laughed because I thought he was joking. And slapped me across the face. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke. But he didn't. He said, you think it's so funny? You think it's funny? You think you're a funny? And he slapped me again. I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard. I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because God, did he just hit me?
I've not seen PTSD at all. I would be so upset, shaking, etc. It's everyone's experience. I will say everyone's experience is different, but a lot of them have commonalities, and there are some big commonalities missing here.
I don't know how do you wake up every single day and continue making content knowing that your entire platform is based on creating the most intense misogynistic hate campaign anyone has ever seen, to the point that the person is still 4 years later getting attacked by people over it. I don't know how she does that and legitimately not think about what did I do? What did I do to this person? Because it's all those people that settle those things about Amber Heard and still do, do you ever think, what if I'm wrong?
They never do. They never stop to think that far. And that's honestly the whole point of what we wanted to bring up here is that it shouldn't be this case that the person who's the most famous or the person who comes out with their side of the story first is, incites a dog pile on a situation. And it sucks that that's the internet's reaction to it, every time.
They use the posts and the clips and stuff to turn the general public's perception of her against her, so that by the time she did her she talked about what he did to her, they didn't take it seriously anymore. And that was clearly their plan to do that. I will never forget the things that I saw during that time and who said it. I will be 95 years old and will be telling people, I hate you because I saw you post this video back then. I will never forget how that made me feel. And it around that time I was I can't talk about this stuff on here anymore. It's not safe. This is not a safe place to talk about that. And so I just didn't for 2 years. And still we started talking about it here. Because it was just that's too scary to imagine something like that happening to me, because they're definitely not going to like me. If they don't like her and she's way more attractive than me, they're never going to like me. And so I was okay, I can't talk about any of this kind of stuff that much on there anymore. But it's just that idea that people have made careers off of ruining her life.
Mm-hmm.
When she was the victim. In any other situation, if you just described it as there's a young 20, 23-year-old person who, when she started dating this person who was 45 and had a lot more money than she did, and moved her into his house, and all the people in the trial that was on his side in the trial in the US were all of his friends and employees. They were literally people being paid by him. If I showed up and had to testify against my boss, I'm definitely going to lie. Because if I don't, I'm not going to have a job anymore.
Yeah.
And you clearly see what happens to people that go against him, so you're not going to be the next one to do it. And so all of his people that were on his side during his trial were all of his employees or his friends. There was nobody that had no stake in him or weren't monetarily attached to him that was vouching for him. But nobody brought any of those things up during that trial. And if any other context, if people describe that situation and said like the only people vouching for him were people that worked for him, that he could like make say whatever because he paid them, or like pay or offer like a bunch of money if they said whatever he wanted. And he was found to be like the victim. People would be up in arms about that. There are cases like that have happened since then, and people are always on the girl's side. But in this situation, people somehow were able to like twist it all on their heads. And to the point that people still now are still trying to find something wrong with Amber Heard.
Yeah.
Even like, Ashley St. Clair, who's talking about Elon Musk and all that other stuff after she left MAGA. In the middle of her talking about Elon Musk, she talked about how one of those things that people used against Amber Heard was that she was involved with Elon for a little bit before she ended up with Johnny. And people like made up this rumor that she had like children with Elon and was like using it to like control him or get money from him or all that kind of stuff. In the middle of one of her videos, she's like, oh yeah, I asked him about, if he had any kids with like these other women, and he mentioned Amber Heard, and she's like, yeah, Amber told me that none of those kids were mine, and that was it. And like they never had anything, they never did anything, they never talked to each other. And it was just like, oh, okay, there's one of those things like debunked about her that people tried to say to justify, like, I think she's an abuser because she did the same thing to Elon, except she never did the same thing to Elon.
And he tells me about the kids with Justine, with Claire, with Siobhan. And then he also, I ask straight up about Amber Heard because this is what I had heard. And he's like, no, I actually asked her because I thought they were mine, but she says that they're not, yada, yada, who. So,
and it's scary how people can post clips out of context, put things on the screen to tell people how they should feel about it, and then have somebody like Emily D. Baker that uses her like perceived intelligence as like a white person who says that they did a job for a long time and gives you the idea by wearing like professional looking clothes and wearing glasses that she's smart and knows what she's talking about, and uses like big words in her videos so that to cover up the fact that she's just being a misogynistic little freak. That's how easy it is. That's how easy it is to get the entire world to turn against somebody. That was really easy. He just gave people some money. And that's it. And her life is ruined for the rest of her life.
Yeah. I have William wanting me to get to wrap up. But our main point tonight about like the parasocial relationships is like, honestly, like, and I don't know, this is my own kind of conclusion I want to come to, which is that there's hardly ever anybody online worth defending to that degree that you can jump into a situation without knowing all the facts or without like understanding, what you're even defending. Because we started off there with like what happened with you on our Threads account. And that's legitimately what happened, to the point where people were not understanding what their arguments were coming off as. Which is just so strange. It's so strange. It's so bizarre, but it's been so normalized. Your celebrities aren't perfect. Your politicians aren't perfect. We talk all the time about how even in family systems, the people you look up to there, like parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, are not perfect. Like everybody should be somewhat questioned. It's one of those gentle parenting things people don't love, is the idea that, like, one of the goals is to have a kid who feels comfortable questioning everything, including authority figures. And that means that sometimes your kid's going to question you. Because if you tell me not to touch the hot stove, you better have a damn good reason, lady.
Yeah.
It looks so fun. Like, but yeah, like, it's just like what you got to do. There's not a single person who's perfect. We've come to this point in our internet history where we want that so bad. for some reason. We want everybody to be perfect, everybody to have never done a single problematic thing in their entire life. It's not realistic. Nobody can live up to those standards. And, like, honestly, having some grace and calling people in rather than always calling them out is just the better way to go.
Yeah, I guess the phrase that people say a lot is like holding someone accountable. You cannot hold someone accountable that you don't know. You can't do that. The internet isn't holding people accountable. They're trying to destroy somebody from the inside out.
Because Shannon's still cooling off from this situation. She is not on our threads as much. I'm having trouble figuring out what do people even put on threads, right? And of course, going on to the algorithm that's been connected to yours for so long, I'm like, everything's about the Brewers. Like,
why you don't? I just want you to think. I just want you to think about what we're saying so that if you think differently, you can make a video and explain why you don't agree. That kind of like discussion always leads to like better things instead of just being like, I just hate you. And that's like where it ends.
Exactly. So we're going to leave you guys with that for tonight. We'll be back with more Lost Hero and more parasocial fandom stuff, probably.
Yep.
All right. Bye.